Something is broken, and most people don't want to say it out loud. Teachers, the architects of every civilization, are working longer hours, carrying heavier loads, and walking into classrooms that feel less safe than they did a decade ago. And yet the respect is shrinking. The authority is being questioned daily. The salary barely keeps pace with inflation. This is not a coincidence. This is a system working exactly as it was designed to work. The question is, designed for whom? Let's start with the workload. In the last 20 years, the average teacher's administrative burden has more than doubled. They are not just teaching anymore. They are counselors, data analysts, event coordinators, policy enforcers, and emotional caretakers, all at once. None of that was in the contract. None of that was in the training. The job description grew quietly and consistently. The pay did not follow. The respect certainly did not follow either. In 1980, surveys across multiple countries showed teachers ranked among the most respected professionals in society, alongside doctors and engineers. Parents trusted them, communities celebrated them, students feared disappointing them. Fast forward to today, and those same surveys show a consistent collapse. Teacher respect scores have fallen in nearly every measurable category across the globe. This didn't happen by accident. Something specific changed, and we are going to trace it scene by scene. Here is what no one is willing to say publicly. Teachers have become the convenient target for every broken thing in society. Schools are underfunded? Blame the teacher. A child struggles academically? Blame the teacher. A generation is disengaged? Blame the teacher. It's a perfect storm of deflection. When systems fail, someone must be held responsible, and teachers, visible, accessible, accountable, have been assigned that role, whether they volunteered for it or not. The classroom itself has transformed beyond recognition. For thousands of years, the teacher was the primary gateway to knowledge. They held information. Students came to them. That dynamic gave teachers natural authority, not because of rules, but because of function. Then the internet arrived, then smartphones. Suddenly, a 15-year-old could access more information in 30 seconds than a teacher could deliver in 30 lessons. The knowledge monopoly collapsed, and with it, a foundational layer of respect. Here is a critical truth that gets buried in most education conversations. Teachers are not free agents. They operate inside a system that was built without them in mind. The curriculum was designed by administrators. The testing schedule was set by politicians. The discipline policy was crafted by lawyers. And the teacher? They are handed this architecture and told to make it work for every child, regardless of context, culture, or capacity. This is the structural trap. The numbers tell a brutal story. In the United States, over 50% of new teachers leave the profession within their first 5 years. In the United Kingdom, the figures are nearly identical. Across sub-Saharan Africa, trained teachers are migrating into NGOs, tech, and private enterprise. The classroom is leaking talent, and the leak is not random. It follows a consistent pattern. Workload, disrespect, low pay, and isolation are the 4 primary exit drivers, every single time.
These 4 forces don't operate separately. They compound. A teacher buried in administrative tasks feels isolated. Isolation breeds resentment. Resentment shows up in the classroom. Students sense it. Parents misread it. Administrators document it. And suddenly the teacher who was once passionate, creative, and committed has become a liability on paper. This is not a character flaw. This is what sustained pressure does to human beings over time. The compound effect is the real killer of teacher potential. To understand why teachers have lost respect, we must first understand when and why they had it. In ancient societies, the teacher was not an employee, they were an elder, a keeper of survival knowledge. To learn from them was not an obligation, it was a privilege. Communities competed for access to great teachers. Families sacrificed to secure placement for their children. The teacher's word carried authority because it carried real-world consequence. Their knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. In ancient Greece, Egypt, China, and across the African continent, teachers occupied a sacred social position. In Kemet, ancient Egypt, the teacher was called Seba, meaning star or guide. Not instructor, not facilitator, guide. The word carries weight. It assumes the one being guided doesn't know the way, and assumes the teacher does. This relationship of knowing versus seeking is the original architecture of respect. It is the model that held for centuries before being systematically dismantled. For most of human history, literacy itself was rare. The ability to read, write, calculate, and interpret the world was not a democratic privilege. It was a controlled resource. Teachers were the gatekeepers. In medieval Europe, the church held the schools. In West Africa, the griots held oral history with the authority of law. In Japan, the sensei relationship was considered sacred, outlasting even family obligation. The teacher was a gatekeeper, and gatekeepers across every culture command institutional and social respect. Even into the 19th and early 20th centuries, access to formal education was a competitive privilege, not a universal right. Families in colonial and post-colonial Africa fought for school placement. Parents in rural Europe walked children miles to reach a schoolhouse. In this environment, the teacher represented opportunity. To disrespect a teacher was to disrespect the future of the family. The stakes were real. The respect was real. Access and its scarcity was the foundation upon which teacher authority stood. At the height of teacher authority, roughly the 1940s through the 1970s, three pillars reinforced that authority simultaneously. First, the family. Parents consistently deferred to the teacher. Second, the institution. Schools operated with clear hierarchical respect. Third, the state. Governments publicly elevated teachers as nation builders. These three pillars formed a protective fortress around teacher authority. When all three worked together, the teacher was nearly untouchable. What followed was the systematic demolition of each pillar, one by one. This was the golden model. Parents reinforced the teacher at home, administrators backed the teacher in disputes, governments funded the mission and celebrated the profession publicly. A student who misbehaved faced a unified consequence from all three directions. The teacher didn't need to fight for authority. The system gave it freely and protected it consistently. Discipline was not a classroom battle, it was a community contract. Everyone signed it, everyone enforced it. The classroom was purposeful, respected, and structurally protected. The first pillar to crack was the family. Beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through the 1980s, a global cultural shift repositioned the child at the center of the family unit. Child-centered psychology, brilliant in many respects, was adopted without a framework for maintaining adult authority. Parents began questioning teachers openly in front of their children, defending behavior that once warranted correction. The message sent, intentionally or not, was clear. The teacher is not automatically right. The child's experience comes first. This shift was not purely ideological, it was also economic. As dual-income households became the norm, parental guilt became a currency. Parents who couldn't give time gave permission instead. Permission to speak back, permission to challenge the teacher, permission to always have the child's version validated above the teacher's. This is not an attack on parents, it is a structural observation. When adult solidarity in education collapses, children sense the gap, and some of them will test every boundary inside it. By the 1990s, the institutional pillar began fragmenting. New managerial philosophies entered education, reframing schools as service providers and students as clients. Suddenly, the teacher was not an authority, they were a service professional. And the client? Always right. This logic, borrowed directly from the corporate world, was catastrophic when applied to education. A doctor doesn't let the patient diagnose themselves. A pilot doesn't let passengers navigate. But the customer service model arrived in education and has never fully left.
The customer service model didn't just change policy, it changed posture. Teachers began second-guessing their instincts, fearing parental complaints, avoiding confrontation to preserve performance reviews. Principals, under pressure from district metrics, stopped backing teachers in disciplinary disputes and started managing optics instead. The teacher lost institutional backup, not through one dramatic decision, but through 1,000 small policy shifts that collectively said, keep the peace, don't escalate, the parent is watching. Authority without backup is not authority, it is performance. And then came standardized accountability culture. No child left behind in America, Ofsted inspections in Britain, national assessments across Africa. Suddenly teachers were measured, ranked, compared, and evaluated on metrics they did not design and often did not agree with. The evaluation culture turned the teacher into the evaluated, and being evaluated changes how you move. It breeds caution, it punishes creativity, it rewards compliance. The most alive, dynamic teachers in the world are ones who have stopped being afraid of the clipboard. Every arrow represents a measurement, every measurement represents a judgment, and every judgment delivered without support erodes professional confidence. This is not accountability, this is attrition by documentation. The system is not measuring teachers to help them grow, it is measuring teachers to manage liability. There is a profound difference between being evaluated to be developed and being evaluated to be defended against. One builds professionals, the other builds survivors. And survivors don't teach with fire, they teach with self-protection. The third and final pillar, state support, collapsed when governments globally reclassified education as a cost center rather than a strategic investment. Budget cuts, overcrowded classrooms, outdated infrastructure, shrinking salary packages relative to cost of living. In many African nations, teachers went months without pay. In some of the world's wealthiest nations, teachers bought classroom supplies with personal income. The state had declared, not in words but in budgets, that education was low priority. Teachers felt it, society noticed it. When a professional must personally fund their own workplace, two things happen psychologically. First, resentment builds. The institution has declared that your environment is not worth their investment. Second, the act of self-funding sends a cultural signal to students and parents: this school lacks. And lack, visible, undeniable lack, erodes the perception of institutional power. Students in crumbling classrooms with outdated books are not just under-resourced, they are receiving a daily signal from the state that their education is not a genuine priority. Overcrowding compounds everything. A teacher managing 30 students can build relationships, maintain authority, and individualize instruction. A teacher managing 60 students in a humid room with broken furniture and no teaching aid is performing crowd control, not education. When classroom management deteriorates, the loudest students define the environment. The quietest students lose out. And the teacher begins the slow, invisible process of emotional shutdown, narrowing their ambition just to survive the day, not inspire it, not transform it, survive it. Now add popular culture. From the 1990s onward, the dominant media portrayal of teachers shifted. The brilliant, authoritative teacher archetype gave way to a new image: the bumbling professor, the ineffective instructor, the out-of-touch adult. Television, film, social media, comedy, all trafficking in the same low-status teacher caricature. Culture shapes perception. Perception shapes behavior. When an entire generation grows up watching teachers being mocked on screen, they arrive in the classroom with that cultural programming already fully installed. Social media weaponized this dynamic at scale. A teacher's worst moment, frustration, confusion, or imperfection could be filmed, clipped, uploaded, and viral within hours. The asymmetry is staggering. The student with a phone holds more immediate power than the teacher with a degree, and every teacher knows it. This awareness, being one bad day away from public humiliation, does not produce better teachers. It produces careful, cautious, self-protective ones. And careful is not the same as inspired. They are not even close. This is the surveillance classroom. Every lesson a potential liability, every response a potential headline. And here is the psychological cost no one calculates. When a teacher operates from fear of being recorded, their instinct for authentic human connection is suppressed. They stop taking creative risks. They stop having hard conversations with difficult students. They stop being the adult in the room, because being the adult sometimes means being unpopular, and the algorithm doesn't reward unpopular. It punishes it, in real time, without mercy.
Let's talk about what sustained disrespect does to a human being's professional identity. Most teachers entered the profession with a calling, not a career plan, a calling. They believed they could change lives. They believed their presence in a room could shift the trajectory of a child. That belief is not naive. It has been proven true by thousands of documented cases. But when the environment systematically undermines that calling, when the world laughs, the budget shrinks, and the students disengage, the calling begins to sound like a lie you told yourself. Burnout is not laziness. This must be said clearly and without apology. A teacher who no longer grades papers with care is not negligent. They are depleted. A teacher who stops attending professional development voluntarily is not unmotivated. They're protecting what little energy they have left for the children in their classroom. Burnout is a rational response to irrational demands. It is the body's last resort protection system. When we shame burned-out teachers instead of studying the conditions that burned them, we guarantee the cycle continues. Think of teacher energy as a reservoir. Every lesson delivered, every student conflict managed, every parent email answered, every administrative report submitted, each one withdraws from the reservoir. Now ask, what fills it back? Professional development that is actually useful? Mentorship, peer support, adequate preparation time? In most school systems, these refill mechanisms are absent, underfunded, or treated as luxuries. Teachers are expected to give daily from a reservoir that is rarely genuinely replenished. The math is not sustainable. It was never designed to be. When teachers operate on near empty, they make different decisions. They avoid conflict. They lower expectations, not from laziness, but from triage. They stop fighting for the struggling student who needs the most investment, because that investment requires reserves they don't have. The students who suffer most from teacher burnout are never the comfortable ones. They are always the ones on the margin, the ones who needed a relentless, creative, fully engaged adult in their corner most, and they're the ones least likely to find one. This is the disrespect spiral. It is self-reinforcing and brutally efficient. A teacher facing chronic disrespect begins to disengage. Disengagement reduces the quality of instruction. Reduced quality generates legitimate criticism. Criticism, layered on existing disrespect, accelerates burnout. Burnout reduces output further, and the cycle tightens. The tragedy is that most people observing from outside see only the bottom of the spiral, a teacher who appears not to care, and conclude the problem began there. It didn't. It began at the top, with conditions. Every burned-out teacher eventually faces a fork. Leave and take their expertise, their relationships, their institutional knowledge with them, adding to the talent hemorrhage already bleeding the profession, or stay, not as the teacher they dreamed of being, but as a functional version of one. Staying but surviving means the profession retains the body but loses the spirit, and a classroom full of present but disengaged teachers is not education. It is childcare with a curriculum attached. The profession loses either way. The fork is a trap. In the African context, this is not a metaphor, it is a measurable migration. Trained educators, particularly in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya, are leaving the classroom in significant numbers, not for failure, but for opportunity. They're applying their organizational skills, communication mastery, and people development expertise to corporate training, human resources, and technology sectors that pay more, respect more, and invest more in their professionals. The classroom trained them. The marketplace captured them. The schools that remain are structurally poorer for it. This is the market's verdict on how society values teaching. Markets don't lie. Markets aggregate the beliefs of millions of people and convert them into prices. In this case, salaries, promotions, and career investment.
When skilled people consistently choose to leave a profession for better paying alternatives, the market is saying clearly, this field does not reward excellence adequately. You can argue against it emotionally, you cannot argue against it economically. The exit patterns of talented teachers are not personal decisions, they are systemic indictments. The balance is broken. Society claims to value education. Survey after survey shows people believe teachers are important, but revealed preference, what people actually fund, reward, and celebrate, tells a different story. We give athletes $100 million contracts and teachers 20-year-old textbooks. We build stadiums with public funds and let school roofs leak. These are not random inconsistencies. They are a value system expressed in resource allocation. And teachers, literate, observant, intelligent people, see this clearly every single budget cycle. We need to address the psychology of professional identity. Human beings require visible validation to sustain long-term commitment, not vanity, biology. The brain's reward system is activated by recognition, status, and social belonging. Professions with clear progression, promotion, title, public awards, financial milestones feed that reward system consistently. Teaching offers almost none of these. No partnership track, no equity, no quarterly bonus. The teacher who performs brilliantly in year 1 and the teacher who performs brilliantly in year 20 are often in the same salary band. That is psychologically devastating. Flat career structures are one of the most underestimated destroyers of teacher motivation. In most education systems, the only way up is out of the classroom, into administration, curriculum development, or leadership. But many teachers don't want to leave the classroom. They want to be excellent inside it. They want the classroom to be a destination, not a waiting room. When excellence in teaching produces no visible career advancement, the system sends a clear message. The classroom itself is not the prize. Leaving it is.
Imagine being 20 years into any other skilled profession and your title, authority, and compensation have barely moved. An engineer progresses from junior to senior to principal. A lawyer moves from associate to partner. A surgeon accumulates specializations, publications, and prestige. Teaching? You are likely still in the same room with the same title, managing the same daily chaos, except now you carry 20 additional years of fatigue and a fraction of your original idealism. The profession does not celebrate depth, it tolerates it. Identity erosion is perhaps the most invisible damage done by sustained disrespect. A teacher who once stood in front of a classroom as a confident, purpose-driven professional begins, over years, to see themselves differently. Not in a dramatic moment, in a slow, imperceptible drift. The language they use about themselves changes. Just a teacher. Only a teacher. At least I have holidays. These phrases are not humility. They are the linguistic evidence of identity collapse, the internalization of society's low valuation of the entire profession. When purpose fades, passion erodes, and identity shrinks, what remains in the classroom is a hollow version of the original educator. Not incompetent, hollow. They know the content, they can execute the lesson plan, they can manage the room. But the thing that makes great teaching irreplaceable, that electric quality of a person who believes in you, sees you, pushes you, and refuses to accept less, that thing is gone. And students feel the absence of it, even when they cannot name it. The relationship between teacher and student is the most important variable in education. More than curriculum, more than technology, more than funding. Research is unambiguous. A student who feels seen and valued by their teacher will outperform their measured potential. A student who feels invisible or disrespected will underperform it. This means the quality of that single human connection determines more educational outcomes than almost any other factor, and it is the first thing to break when teachers are broken. The data is there. Here is what hollow teaching does in practice. Energy flows to the easiest students, those who already want to learn. The difficult student, who needs the most engagement, receives the least, not from cruelty, but from conservation. A depleted teacher intuitively invests where the return is quickest. It's not strategy, it's survival. But the long-term consequence is that the children who most need an inspired, relentless adult in their corner are the ones least likely to find one. The gap widens invisibly. every day. This is the equation that education systems refuse to fully accept. Teacher well-being directly drives student outcomes, not as a peripheral consideration, as a central variable. When a country invests in teacher mental health, teacher pay, teacher professional development, and teacher community, student results improve. This is not theory. Finland proved it, Singapore proved it, South Korea proved it. These countries didn't achieve educational excellence by pressuring teachers harder. They achieved it by treating teachers as a strategic asset they have always been. Finland pays teachers competitively, limits class sizes strictly, and gives teachers significant autonomy over curriculum. Singapore places teaching as one of the most prestigious career choices in national culture, accepting only top graduates into teacher training. South Korea refers to teachers as nation builders in official government communication. These are not accidents of culture. They are results of deliberate policy decisions made by governments that decided teachers were worth the investment. The question every nation must now ask is, when do we make that same decision? Imagine a school system where the teacher walks in and the room adjusts. Not from fear, from earned respect. Where parents prepare their children to receive instruction, not challenge it. Where the institution backs the teacher's professional judgment without requiring political maneuvering. Where the government funds the mission without attaching impossible metrics to every lesson. Where the teacher goes home with enough energy to plan tomorrow, connect with family, and wake up ready. That system exists. It exists in fragments. The question is whether it can become the standard everywhere. There is a profound and painful gap between how teachers are perceived and what they actually produce. The teacher who appears ordinary, who shows up, manages chaos, delivers content, grades papers, and goes home, may have redirected the entire life trajectory of 3 children in that single day. A child who was about to give up didn't. A child who never felt seen did. A child who needed one adult to believe in them found one. None of this appears in any metric. None of it trends on social media, but it is irreplaceable. The impact of a great teacher is not visible in the year it is planted. It appears 10 years later when a student chooses a career no one expected. 20 years later, when a parent tells their own child, there was one teacher who changed everything. The teacher rarely receives the credit for it. The scientist who saves 1 million lives was once a struggling student who needed one teacher to not give up on them. That teacher's name is almost never mentioned. It should be. It always should be. Every teacher is planting seeds in conditions that are often hostile to growth. The soil is underfunded. The weather is unpredictable. Political, economic, and social storms affect the classroom constantly. The tools are often outdated. The farmer, the teacher, is frequently exhausted, undervalued, and working with insufficient support. And yet, despite all of this, the seeds continue to grow. Children continue to become more than their circumstances. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a teacher, in a moment of impossible difficulty, chose not to stop planting. Here is where the conversation must shift, because we are not here simply to catalog the damage done to teaching. We are here to make a diagnosis and then make a decision. The damage is real. The disrespect is documented. The systemic failures are measurable. But inside every system are individuals who have the power to change their own corner of it. The teacher who reclaims their authority begins not in the institution, but in their own mind. That is where this transformation must start, always. The first reclamation is psychological. A teacher who does not believe they deserve respect will not behave in ways that command it. This is not arrogance, it is professional psychology. The most respected professionals in any field carry an internal certainty about the value of their expertise. They do not beg to be taken seriously. They operate from the assumption that their work matters, their preparation counts, and their presence in the room is a gift to everyone in it. Teachers must relearn this, or learn it for the very first time. This is the identity reclamation scene. It begins with a single internal declaration: I am not a supporting character in my own classroom. I am not a servant of the curriculum. I am not an employee of the student's comfort. I am an architect of human potential. I hold a rare combination of skills, the ability to understand content deeply and translate it for minds that are still forming. That is not an ordinary gift. That is not a replaceable function. That is a calling worth defending, with clarity, with posture, and with strategy.
The second reclamation is structural, and it is called boundaries. Not walls, boundaries. A wall refuses all entry. A boundary defines what enters and on what terms. A teacher with clear professional boundaries is not a cold teacher. They are a protected one. Protected teachers can give more, not less. When you know where you stop and where the role's demands must also stop, you stop losing yourself in the role. And a teacher who has not lost themselves is the teacher students remember for the rest of their lives. The third reclamation is presence. Classroom authority is not about volume. It is not about fear. It is about presence. The undeniable quality of a person who is fully, deliberately, consciously in the room. Students respect presence before they respect content. Before they know whether you are brilliant, they feel whether you are here. A distracted teacher teaches distraction. A present teacher teaches presence. And presence, sustained, warm, deliberate, is the most powerful classroom management tool ever created. No policy document required, just you, fully inhabiting the room. Presence attracts. Every great teacher who ever lived understood this intuitively, even those who could not articulate it in pedagogical language. The classroom works when the teacher is the most compelling thing in it. Not the screen, not the phone, not the drama outside the window, the teacher. Compelling does not mean entertaining. It means purposeful, meaningful, intentional. A teacher who enters a classroom knowing exactly why they are there and what they are building, that teacher does not struggle for attention. They never need to demand it. The fourth reclamation is systemic thinking. A teacher who understands that they are not just teaching a subject, they are building a system of thinking inside a child's mind, operates at a completely different level. They are not delivering lessons. They are building cognitive architecture, behavioral architecture, relational architecture. When a teacher sees themselves as a system builder, they stop measuring success by whether today's lesson was completed. They start measuring whether this child is more capable than they were yesterday. That single shift changes everything. The fifth reclamation is community. Isolated teachers burn out fastest. Connected teachers last. This is not optional sociology, it is organizational physiology. When teachers build genuine professional communities, where they share resources, celebrate wins, name their struggles honestly, and hold each other accountable, they create a buffer against external forces that erode individuals. A teacher alone is vulnerable to every political wind and every parental complaint. A teacher in a strong community of practice is resilient. Build your network with the same intention you build your curriculum. Teaching cannot be a solitary act of heroism. The profession has long celebrated the lone teacher in the difficult school, the one who sacrifices everything for their students, who works 16-hour days, who never asks for help. That narrative is seductive. It is also catastrophically harmful. It normalizes self-sacrifice as the standard of professional virtue. It creates a culture where asking for support feels like weakness, and it ensures the most committed teachers burn through their reserves fastest. Heroism should never be the minimum requirement. Systems should be. The sixth reclamation is economic. A teacher's knowledge is not confined to their classroom. It never was. The digital age has created an unprecedented opportunity for educators to monetize their expertise beyond the salary line. Online courses, digital products, consulting, content creation, coaching. These are not distractions from teaching. They are extensions of it. They create financial security that reduces desperation. They create visibility that builds professional authority. They create options. And options are the most powerful psychological asset any professional can hold. This is the new architecture of the teacher's professional life. Not classroom or digital world, classroom and digital world. The teacher who builds an income stream through digital products does not abandon their students, they protect them. Because a financially secure teacher is not afraid of an unfair evaluation. They are not paralyzed by the threat of losing a job. Financial security is professional freedom, and professional freedom is what allows a teacher to be honest, bold, creative, and fully present. Everything the profession needs more of. Here is the truth this entire video has been building toward. Teachers are not failing. They are operating inside systems that were not designed to sustain them. And systems can be changed by policy, by culture, by community, and most immediately by individual decision. The decision to reclaim your identity, to rebuild your authority, to expand your income, to find your community, to operate from professional power rather than professional survival. The classroom needs its architects back, not the broken ones, the rebuilt ones. These are the 6 reclamations. Identity, knowing who you are beyond the job title. Boundaries, defining what you protect. Presence, inhabiting the room completely. Systems thinking, teaching architecture, not just content. Community, building with others, not surviving alone. Income, expanding your economic life beyond the salary. These 6 are not a self-help checklist. They are a professional framework for teachers who are serious about longevity, impact, and power. Not one of them requires institutional permission. Every single one begins with a personal decision. The erosion of teacher respect was not a single event. It was a 40-year accumulation. Cultural, institutional, economic, and technological forces, converging on a profession not structurally prepared to resist them. But accumulation works both ways. Every action that reclaims teacher authority adds to a counter-accumulation. Every teacher who rebuilds their identity, expands their professional network, and invests in their own development is depositing into a cultural account that must eventually shift the balance. The reversal has already begun, in pockets, in people, in classrooms. Change in a profession never begins in a policy document. It begins in a person. One teacher who decides to operate differently, who carries themselves differently, who refuses to shrink in institutional spaces designed to minimize them. That teacher changes the room they are in. That changed room influences the student who leaves it. That student becomes the parent who sends their child back with a different attitude. That child meets another teacher who has also reclaimed their power. This is how culture shifts, one dignified, purposeful educator at a time.
This is what teacher authority looks like when it is restored. Not intimidation, not dominance. A flame, a source of light that others are naturally drawn to. A presence that organizes the room without demanding it. A professional who knows what they know, owns what they carry, and gives what they give. From a full place, not a depleted one. This is not a fantasy. This is the natural state of a teacher who has been adequately supported, genuinely respected, and professionally empowered. It is accessible. It is the standard we must demand. If you were a teacher watching this, and something in this video named what you have been carrying alone, you are not imagining it. The weight is real. The disrespect is systemic. The exhaustion is earned. But none of it is permanent. None of it is your final chapter. The profession needs you. Not your compliant, reduced version, but your full, rebuilt, reclaimed version. That version is available to you. It begins today. It begins with a decision. It begins with this question: what am I willing to reclaim starting now? The ascent spiral is the reverse of the disrespect spiral. Each reclamation feeds the next. When you reclaim your identity, you show up with more presence. More presence builds more student respect. More student respect reduces disciplinary exhaustion. Less exhaustion unlocks more creative energy. More creative energy produces better lessons. Better lessons create better outcomes. Better outcomes build professional confidence. Confidence attracts parental respect. Parental respect reinforces institutional backing. The spiral climbs. It is self-reinforcing in the exact same way the descent was. Use it deliberately. Every morning, a teacher stands at the threshold of a classroom. On one side of that door is the world's noise, budget cuts, social media debates, administrative demands, cultural disrespect. On the other side is something else entirely, a room full of developing minds, a space where one well-placed sentence can redirect a life. One genuine moment of being seen can prevent 1,000 moments of invisible suffering. The world doesn't fully understand this. The teacher does. That understanding is the authority no budget can cut and no viral video can take. Teachers must also become advocates for themselves and for each other. The narrative about teaching will not change unless teachers change it, not silently in classrooms, publicly in forums, on platforms, through content, through mentorship, through policy engagement. When teachers go silent, others fill the space with the wrong stories. Your voice carries authority that no politician, pundit, or parent possesses, the authority of presence. You have been in the room. You have seen the data from the inside. That story needs to be told, loudly, consistently, without apology. Your classroom is not your only stage. Every teacher holds knowledge that someone outside their building would pay to access. Phonics methodology, classroom management systems, subject mastery, teacher coaching, school leadership principles. The global digital economy has created a marketplace for every serious educator who chooses to participate. You do not need a publisher's permission. You do not need a district's approval. You need your expertise, a platform, and the decision to be visible. Your knowledge was always worth more than one salary. Start acting accordingly. Start today. This is the final declaration before the call to action. Teaching is not a sacrifice. It was never meant to be a sacrifice. It was meant to be a vocation, a chosen, celebrated, powerfully compensated, systemically supported, socially honored calling. Everything that turned it into a sacrifice was constructed, and what was constructed can be reconstructed, differently, better, with teachers at the center of the design, not as the target of every broken system's deflection, but as the architects of civilization they have always been. Remember who you are. You are not one person. You are a multiplier. Every teacher reading or watching this video holds the power to influence not one life, but the network of every life that one person will touch. Your student becomes a parent. That parent carries your values forward. Your student becomes a leader. That leader builds institutions shaped by what you showed them. Your student becomes a teacher. That teacher carries your method decades beyond your retirement. You are not teaching a classroom. You are seeding a civilization. Carry that weight with honor. Protect it with intention. You will never know the full measure of what you have built. The child you stayed patient with on the Thursday afternoon when you had nothing left, that child is somewhere right now making a decision that your patience made possible. The student you refused to write off, they are thriving. The quiet one you noticed, they carry that noticing with them still. Teachers live in their students long after the bell rings, long after the school year ends, long after retirement. The classroom ends, the impact never does. Teachers are working harder. That much is undeniable. But the question that opened this journey was not just about effort, it was about respect. And the answer, after 73 scenes of honest examination, is this. The respect was not lost because teachers stopped deserving it. It was taken systematically, culturally, economically, politically, by forces that found it convenient to diminish the profession. The reckoning is overdue, not as sentiment, as strategy, as policy, as investment, as cultural revolution. The architects of civilization deserve to be treated as exactly that. The teacher you were before the system wore you down, and the teacher you are capable of being again, the distance between those two people is not years of therapy or institutional reform, though both would help.
The distance is a decision to reclaim your narrative, to refuse the low status assigned by a culture that demands your product while refusing to value the producer. You were not made for survival mode. You were made for significance. Choose significance. Choose it today. Choose it tomorrow. Keep choosing it. This is the final declaration before the call to action. If you are a teacher, a school leader, or someone who loves what education can be when it is done right, this is your signal. The world needs you back at full capacity. Not half present, not surviving, not compliant. Full, reclaimed, rebuilt. The class is already assembled. The students are already waiting. The civilization is already depending on you. Walk through the door. Take the room. Teach like the architect you are. The world will catch up. It always does.